So tonight is just a roundtable discussion, and we're going to be talking about some of the takeaways from AutoEnter Live for those of us that were able to partake of that in either all or in parts, whether that was great sessions or side conversations or just the format or anything about it. I know Andy has some things that he would like to bring up, so we'll just kind of let the conversation morph into that. So whatever you feel the appropriate time, Andy, you can jump in there. But
No worries.
So who would like to go first?
Did everyone attend?
Yeah, I guess that's probably a good place. Yeah, who was all able to at least attend some of the sessions?
Teresa and I both did.
I sadly pretty much only saw the opening and closing sessions because work kept getting in the way, which is the downside of an all remote event like that, because I was still at my desk and not off-site somewhere where people couldn't find me. So I intend to go back and watch whatever recordings are still out. And Chad told me there's all kinds of cool stuff I should check out. So.
Yeah, but the opening was clearly bad.
Well, I had a trick, and to me it was a little better than in person because I had like 5 or 6 browser tabs open. And if one was talking and I wanted to hear on the other, you could mute the tab without closing it. So I could hop back and forth pretty quickly, which we never could when you had to run, half a mile down the aisle to get to the next session or whatever. And then all the side sessions. I didn't like the private chat because it wasn't working well, but everything else was so great.
Yeah, I was impressed with the platform.
Yeah.
I was surprised how well it worked and how much it made me feel like I was at a thing. Much more so than I've done a couple of these in the past with other organizations too, and they're always rough. And it just feels like you're just watching videos, whereas this felt more interactive. And from where I am, everything worked. Everything played when it was supposed to. I could hear everybody. I was pretty impressed with it from that perspective alone.
Yeah, I would agree. That was my first experience with that particular platform, and I would agree with everything you said, Thomas, about it was the next best thing to being there, really. Even though I'd like to be there, it was still pretty good. So
I would rather be there, but it was good. Yeah,
I agree. Go ahead.
What platform did they use?
I don't know.
Was it Hop In?
Mm-hmm.
And Gianine is joining us. Yeah, I felt that Slant and Proofcase did a great job of leveraging the platform and setting it up well. So it did really have cohesion and an identity. And I felt like I was someplace as well. I had only one quibble, which was that I was able to fuzz the back of my screen, which was great for the opening session. But when I went to the Claris booth, you can't do that. So suddenly everybody knew that I was actually in Naples, Florida, in my mom's bedroom. That was kind of embarrassing. But other than that, it was perfect. So.
And honestly, I thought the side chat that was happening while the video played, I thought that was kind of interesting because you could actually ask a question of the presenter while the presentation was still going on. So you didn't get lost or stuck because you missed something. You were able to, get that answer right away and, talk to the other attendees in the room, which was something you wouldn't have been able to do if it were live. I think if we ever go back to live, I think it would be neat to have a presenter and then the presenter have a designated moderator so you could still have that, like the side chat with the people in the room, but
I think you're not the first person to suggest that because it is powerful. I first experienced that at our Engage Beyond last year, the year before, and my part was recorded, but I was in the Discord watch channel or Slack watch channel, wherever it was. And it was really cool to be able to talk to people and answer questions while you're speaking. Felt a little bit out of body to do, but Robert, I think, had a similar experience this year with his presentation. So from a speaker's perspective, I think it works really well too. It'd be nice if we find a way to do that.
I thought there was a good variety of topics too. Wasn't all technical. There was some business in there, and it was a good bunch of diversity and a lot of women in there, and I thought it was pretty good.
Yeah. Of course, the only problem I have with that though is usually like at DevCon there was always like there's 4 sessions that happening at the same time and I want to go to 3 of them.
Yeah.
I still felt that with, this one. There was like either 2 or 3, and it seemed like I think almost every time slot was, oh, I want to see both of those. So I had to try to pick, okay, which one do I want to watch now versus, okay, I'll bookmark this one so I know to go back and watch the recording later, which I hardly ever remember to do. But
Yeah.
I have actually gone back and watched a couple. So
I'd worked with Albert a lot of years ago, and so I said, "Oh, I know what he's going to say. I can skip his." I said, "Oh my gosh!" I saw both the videos by his group, but I said, "I wish that had been in that chat
Back
when
of
they
the
were
right.
talking, because
Oh,
those
kind of
were,
nice. Very nice.
Albert.
Yeah.
That's just Albert. Very cool."
So what were people's favorite sessions, or the ones you found most interesting? Which I realize it's now almost 2 weeks ago, so we've had plenty of time to forget everything that's happened since then. But
Well, I had a couple of favorites. Let me see how I want to go into this. Talk about the favorite sessions first. Vanessa Costanzo did a very excellent session on the 5 age cohorts, if you want to call them that are in the FileMaker community: the silents, the boomers, the Generation X, the Gen Ys or the millennials, and the Gen Zs, or as they become called, the Zoomers. And I think she made some extremely good points in that session and provided valuable information to the community, many of whom probably, because of the technical focus of the community, are not well versed in demographics, psychographics, and that type of stuff. And I've sent along to her the original book by Neil Howe and the late Bill Strauss called Generations, which is what started all of this typology to begin with. But she did a very excellent job. Then I thoroughly enjoyed Wim and the semicolons on the left. I'm still chuckling about that, and people are still talking about it. I enjoyed Klaus's session on server, though I had seen him present on that before, but he did a very thorough job. The one, I don't want to call it a deficiency, the one area where improvement might be needed in these presentations is that many of the speakers, possibly for time constraint reasons, possibly because they didn't know that maybe they should have done it, just started their presentation without any benefit of context at the beginning of their talk. And a couple of minutes of that can go a long way towards improving the reception of what they have to say and the understanding of people, because not everybody understands or appreciates the significance of what a particularly highly skilled, highly technical person may be saying. So, and then this was not something that was unique to AutoEnter Live. This occurs at in-person developer conferences. It occurs at RSA. It occurs at FIDO. It occurs at Ignite. All these other things, but it's helpful in my estimation to provide that context. And it reminded me that I need to follow that advice for myself in a series of presentations I started last week and will finish next week. So that's probably more than anybody wants to know about my impressions of AutoEnter Live programs, but it was good. And I mean, notwithstanding a few snafus with the platform, Hop-In works very well, as does a platform called One Venue, because they are designed for these types of conferences, as opposed to sales presentations or things that we sometimes might see on fill in the blank, Zoom, WebEx, Ring Central, whatever. So I thought I agree with Andy. I think that Proofgeist and Soliant did a very good job with this. So enough from me.
But you do bring up a question. I probably should have led with this question instead of the one about the sandwiches. So where does everybody come down on the left semicolon versus the right semicolon?
Put them in the middle or on their own line.
I think one of the answers at the event was something like my worldview has been shaken or something, and that's kind of why I came down on it, because I was like, that makes total sense. Like, why don't I do that? I should do that. That's cool.
Because I could see it. It's like, okay, because like every line is always going to be different, so that way you know that, okay, the semicolon's definitely there. You don't have to look for it. But I think I would be physically incapable of putting the semicolon anywhere other than on the right, even though I understand why they would want to put it on the left. But that's just me.
Yep.
Yeah, I get it, but I can't do it. Yeah.
It just hurts.
It's
feels wrong.
It looks wrong. I know it makes more sense from potentially, but yeah, it's wrong. It's a religious thing, I guess. It's just wrong. Those people will burn. That was an exaggeration.
Todd, I confess I did not get to see the session regarding the while function, and I'm curious how it went. It's still on my list of things to watch.
I thought it went pretty well. It was really strange though, because I had recorded it, the week before, and it's like coming up to the time when the session's about to start, and it's like, why in the world am I getting nervous? It's already done and over with. It's for my involvement. I guess I was just worried about that. Rick Coleman would be lurking in the chat and ask me some question to stump me, and then it's like I don't have the answer, so I don't know if that's what it was or not. But
now you know what it's like to be Beyonce when she releases an album, right? She's probably wondering how people are going to receive it. So that's awesome.
I guess that's it. Yeah, but I guess I thought it went well. There was actually a few things that I recorded more than I needed, and then I had to try to edit it down to get it into the 25 or 26 minutes that they wanted. But I think I covered stuff. I was really happy with that one because I had found a different background to use on the green screen, so I'm actually sitting in the Rebel base on Yavin 4 from Star Wars. So that's my background. So I guess one of the sessions I was able to go back and review was the one that Danny Mack had done on transactions.
Oh, that was excellent.
Which, I really like. There was a few things that I'd heard, like bits and pieces of, from previous DevCons.
He pulled it all together in a short time, and it was very, very good.
Yeah, that was an impressive amount of information for 20 whatever minutes. Yeah.
It's good to see Danny presenting again. It's been a while.
Yeah, I was about to say, Danny's been dealing with this question of transactions since, I don't know, DevCon number 2 in San Jose. That was what, to some degree, gave rise to the invention of the Secure FM plugin and other, which was essentially a plugin for those of you who've never used it, that disabled certain portions of the user interface to prevent accidents or malfeasance from occurring. But Danny, because of the construction by, at that time, New Millennium, now Codance, of the Genesis accounting and business process platform, needed to be able to have that type of functionality in the product and in his distributed solution.
Yeah, and Todd admits that he learned about transactions from Danny when he worked there. So it was pretty cool.
Yeah, Todd migrated from St. Louis area west to Denver, I think. And Todd was one of the original members of version 2 of the Friday night chat. And we were able to get him connected with Danny when he got out there, and Danny hired him.
So Gianine, how was it for you there? All the stuff you had to do.
Oh, for AutoEnter? I mean,
Yeah.
I honestly, it was so well organized and stewarded by the teams at Soline and Proofgeist that it really was not difficult. It was fun, actually.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I mean, even I was going to ask this group what your experience was with the virtual expo and the booths, because I feel like I wish I had popped into more of them, and there's really no excuse for why I didn't. I think it was just so foreign to be able to be in 6 different places at once that I didn't take full advantage of that. But
yeah, I can talk a little more to the booths. Now it was
Yeah.
a last minute Sunday night. You're gonna set up the WIT FM booth, and I said okay. And I really hadn't planned to do that.
That's when you're really grateful for such a friendly platform, right? Hopkins
It's
platform
like
was
so-
really
so-
easy to use.
Yeah, so Chrissy and Martha were like holding my hand, setting me up, and I didn't stand there because there was other stuff I wanted to see. But when I was there, I tried to make sure everybody knew it was there and tried to set up some sharing sessions and video chatting and stuff. And I don't think we ever got the video working on our side, but I've talked to other vendors, and the concept of a booth when you're in person is you can see a person coming in, and you can reel them in and ask questions, and all we could see was this list of people by name, and they didn't say anything, their name was there. They didn't chat, they didn't ask questions, we invited them to a video, they didn't join. And so it was a little different, and I think a little harder than an in-person booth. So maybe some things can be tweaked around with that, where I don't know, there was some software you can see the person walking up to your booth, and we should be able to see a video of who they are when they walk up or something. Some of those suggestions were made, but it was not as good as what we had hoped for booth wise.
But it was very indispensable to the success
yeah.
of the event. I've said this before we used to go to the various dev cons. The most important element of the conference is the human element. It's not the program, it's the people. And these booths, the Claris booth, Hansa's booth, Proofgeist's booth, Soliant's booth, the WIT FM booth, they were indispensable to the sense of belonging that the conference reinforced and badly needed to rekindle. The community badly needed for that to be rekindled. And the structure went a long way to do that. Was it all perfect? No, none of these things ever is. There's, there are technical issues. There are people that show up and prattle on about every issue known to mankind. But it was the ability to interact with those people. Andy, your presence in the FileMaker booth or Claris booth, whatever we're calling it this week, Robert's presence, Rick's presence on the various chats and messaging boards, that's indispensable in my view. And
I agree with you, Stephen. I felt the same way. And I feel like I was able to connect one-to-one with people via the chats and in the booths. And then I did spin up a couple side one-on-one meetings through the platform that really proves your point. That you know,
Plus, I got to talk to you, Gianine, about my favorite question of the QR code. So, you know, I can't beat
yes,
that.
we can't
But-
we can't discredit that.
But this is the key to the community. It's going to be the key going forward. And hopefully we're going to have a single unified in-person meeting again in coming years. But we could certainly find a way to integrate this virtual experience into that, even for the people who are physically present. Because if somebody wants to stop and have a cup of coffee or catch a bite to eat, or just rest his or her feet or head or whatever, they can still pop into these channels. So that I think is pretty important.
Yeah, I think there's something to that. More than a few people were talking about that, Stephen, that some of the advantages of the digital platform could accrue in a live environment as well. And the question then is to figure out what's possible and what can we make happen. But you know, to the earlier comment about my presence in the booth, it was as valuable for me as it was for anybody else. I you know, it's critical that we're out talking to people and hearing the questions and know what folks care about. So yeah, I dropped into the booth. I was there a lot less than I wanted to be, not because I was technically on holiday, because too much work was interfering with my holiday. But you know, it was great to be in the booth. And you know, at one point, I think a question was answered or asked about Problem Solver Circle, and that I had mentioned in the opening that, you know, would be coming back. And you know, nobody really wanted to answer. So I'm like, well, answer the question. Of course it's coming back. Like, let's talk about it. So, you know, it was nice to be there and be able to, you know, just be with people for your point there, Stephen. So.
Well, and I'll say too, the sense of belonging, and knowing where to find your friends, you know what I mean, was real for me at least. And even when I did remember, oh wait, you should go check out the other booths, because you don't just need to hang in the Claris booth, which also tends to happen when we're in person, right? You go to where you're comfortable. I liked knowing that I could just pop into the WFM booth or pop into the Proofgeist booth and say a quick hello, you know, and get a response from, you know, friends and neighbors kind of thing. And it did create that sense of togetherness. And I really did appreciate that. And again, you kind of have to suspend disbelief a little bit in this environment and allow yourself to be surprised or reset your expectations. And I really have to say, it surpassed whatever expectations I had. The whole event.
I got a lot of email from people because I would pop into booths and say, hey, haven't seen you in 30 years. You know, how you do? And then they, you know, they didn't have time to really chat. But man, the week after, I got a lot of emails. Or, yeah, we need to email more often or call or something. We lost that touch, and it really was kind of a catalyst for that, I think, as well.
Yeah.
I have to be honest, I expected the absolute worst from this conference. It seemed to be put together at the last minute. It was all technology based. I thought it would be an utter failure. So I didn't carve any time out in my schedule. And that's my biggest regret. So day of, I had to make a decision. Do I go watch the recorded sessions, or do I just hang out in the booths and listen? I didn't really participate, but because I was working, but I just listened, and the information that I got from just listening in the background and occasionally chiming in and putting in a chat message or something, that was invaluable to, and I wish I could go back and do it again, and hopefully we can do that in person.
100%.
So I have a question for this group. I mean, knowing what we know of having done and been together in person and hoping that we will in fact do that again, but also having experienced AutoEnter Live in the way we just experienced it, is your desire that they both somehow continue in some way, whether they're combined in nature or not, like that there's a virtual element that happens either independently of an in-person or combined, or what does everybody feel?
I think if the platform is going to grow at the speed that they're planning, in-person event in the summer as it used to be, and maybe a virtual one in the winter when it's a little bit harder to travel due to weather.
Yeah, that's a good point too. Seasonal and yeah, okay. Just curious.
And I thought, another one throughout the year that was virtual would keep that momentum going, because it's really hard when it was just once a year. We had regionals and Macworld and other events that we could attend, so it kind of filled in the gaps throughout the year. But when we got down to just the conference and that was it was really a long time between.
I would, speaking of someone that is disabled, I like the fact of there being an inclusion of having a virtual option, because it's really hard to get person conferences. So I kind of appreciated COVID in the last couple years, because I'm able to join more things. But I did go to DevCon several times, but it's probably in my future I probably will not be able to physically go. So I do like if somehow both could happen. Whether it's together or if it's separate or a couple of different ones, like Bev's saying, something like that.
Well, for my part, I believe that it will happen. That I think the virtual technology is more available. It's cheaper. It's easier to do, and I think that it will happen. This is kind of part of our new normal. So I'm curious to see kind of where it lands. I'm also curious to see if groups like this one just have more power, right? Because it is a virtual event that we at a moment in time where we can get together and talk and see what's on our minds, right? And whether developer groups like this around the world will have a kind of a new purpose and a new power, almost akin to the way we used to really rely on developer groups regionally, right, as a resource, as a touch point on a regular basis. That maybe there's something there too. As a little secret, I'm actually an introvert, and so COVID has had its benefits for me as well.
No, I understand that too.
As much as I get on stage and talk out loud, I prefer to get my energy at home here, so it works out okay.
Yeah, that's what I tell people. I'm a recovering introvert, so
that's right.
Just one thing I would add, I think, having both, or having something that's more often, as now that the platform is, we're not waiting 18 to 24 months to get the new stuff. It's coming every 3 to 6 months. If you have something twice a year, so that more people can learn about, this is what's new, this is what you can do, I think there's certainly an advantage to that as well.
Well, I think you're being a little conservative, because we're releasing every couple of weeks, right? And so I think the communications have to be relatively continuous, right? And again, why I think meetings like this are really powerful. I don't know if y'all saw Robert Holsey's demo at the event, but the amount of stuff that he was able to show just 6 weeks after we initially released the Studio platform out to problem solvers for customers is kind of mind-boggling. And most of that's in the product already for folks that have it, and the rest of it's coming next week. So the pace is just different. And so kind of the way we incrementally understand what's coming and then how we leverage it, it's going to require us to be present together a lot. So really appreciate you having us in here, Todd, today to chat about it a little bit. And we'll figure out how to keep that information flow and the updates coming.
Yeah, you're always welcome. Like I said, if you ever make it up to Pittsburgh in person, we'll get you one of those permane sandwiches. So
I'm down. As long as it doesn't have any cheese, I'm good. I'm willing.
Have you never had a permane sandwich, Andy?
I've never had a permane, I confess.
My first permanes was with Todd Weller.
yeah.
And
Nice.
so my favorite Permanis is the cheesesteak, so you know.
All
You
right.
said you like cheesesteak, right? So-
I just can't eat the cheese. That's my problem. I don't know. It's
Oh,
like-
that's right. I'm sorry. You did say that. So-
That's okay. I live vicariously through others now. I went to a thing with friends the other night and they had a big old pizza. It looked delicious.
Well, it's still good even without the cheese. It's still good.
True. I haven't done that.
All right. Well, it's about a quarter till. Does anybody have any immediate thoughts on AutoEnter Live before we let Andy and Gianine kind of lead the rest of the discussion here as we think about what's new in Claris Studio and Problem Solver Circle? And obviously, if you've thought of something in 5 minutes, we can always come back to more AutoEnter Live after that. But I don't want to be respectful of everybody's time and all of that. So I guess take it away, Andy.
Well, I guess it stems from my comments, and I don't know how many folks saw Robert's demo at the AutoEnter event, but that product is rapidly evolving, and I think we have perspectives on how it brings value to the FileMaker experience, right? How the Claris platform with the FileMaker experience and Claris Pro, ultimately hosted with server and available with Claris Go and things like that, is augmented and improved with Studio. We have a pretty clear vision for that, but it doesn't evoke itself until you see it sometimes, right? So I was kind of curious to see what questions or reactions you had to anything you saw from Robert, or any questions for me that I can help elaborate on.
I guess not a question, but I know I'm certainly excited. One of the things that we've tried to do several different times for our sister company is their manufacturing. They want to give their customers visibility, but we don't want to just open up a FileMaker solution for them to be able to see what the status of their order is or how soon they're going to be taking this particular shipment. And a lot of what is now being added is that ability to give them give your customer a view through a web interface. So that was pretty exciting to see, and excited to get to start playing with it to see what we can leverage in that area, because we've tried web direct and just could never get to where we wanted it to be. So I think this would hopefully allow us to develop that faster and have a better experience for the non-FileMaker world, if you will.
I think so. And I think ultimately that's kind of its sweet spot, right? When we think about what Studio means in the platform, it is about giving us, this community of developers, a more robust tool set. Studio is not about replacing what we can already do well with the platform we know and love and have grown to use over decades, right? We have that to do good stuff. And WebDirect for your commentary still has its place, right? You can build highly custom user experiences with it, but it's not built for web scale. Like, you're not going to build Amazon on it, right? But the database engine that's under Studio is what Amazon is built on, right? It's built for scale. It's built for public web experiences. And so that we can sort of extend the reach of our creativity, our ability to build cool software outside of the sort of traditional domain of FileMaker, to me, is pretty exciting. And so we look at feature functionality that should complement what's in FileMaker, right? There's no reason for us to build something that doesn't complement FileMaker, because if we do that, there's no reason for you to buy it or not buy its competitor or whatever, right? So it should improve on what we have at a feature level, and it should improve on what we have in sort of its use case domain, like where it can excel, that a product that was founded on premise and local area networks, has some limitations, right? Chris Moyer did a stream with Richard Carlton recently talking about MongoDB, the database that's behind Studio. Did anybody see it by any chance? It's worth it. It's worth a look. Richard's got it over at fmptraining.tv or whatever his brand is on YouTube. And it's Richard and Chris Moyer talking about MongoDB. And it wasn't so much that Chris did make some appeal that it's useful for FileMaker developers to understand Mongo because it's got its own unique, tooling and it's good. You can actually use it as a tool set. But more, I think what Chris is trying to do is analyze what is Mongo, and as a NoSQL environment that's made for high transactional scale and native web apps, then what domain does that suggest we can start dipping our toes into with the kind of things that we build? And so it's really I think a good analysis by Chris with no coaching or prodding by us, where he's making assumptions about what the platform might do. And I think his vision is good. Chris Moyer is a smart guy. I've known him for 30 years, right? So would recommend a view on that if you get a chance. But when Robert demoed, one of the things that wasn't, he showed a lot of features, like we have a spreadsheet list view in the Studio platform. You have the ability to do basic summaries and calculations kind of much more directly. It's for click here and say I want this column summarized. It's you do grouping, not traditional sub-summary reporting like you do in FileMaker, right? It's much simpler. It's immediate, it's fast. And so there's some of that. There's some charting capabilities he showed. There were some abilities to do CRUD actions, right? Create, retrieve, update, delete in Studio from FileMaker, right? And the implication of that is kind of interesting because what that thing that Peter originally called ESS Plus, as the binding mechanism between the Studio data repository and your FileMaker Draco data repository, what they're affecting there is really to kind of harmonize those two repositories into one data platform for your app development, right? You can be a FileMaker acting upon data bidirectionally that's in Draco and Studio at the same time. And the promise there is that the user experience, you won't really know the difference necessarily, right? And Studio, for its part, can gobble up FileMaker data and integrate it and synthesize it with stuff that's coming in from publicly filled out forms or integrations with other apps and other services, fueled by Connect, right? Because we're going to tune Connect so that it works really well and is integrated with Studio. And we'll do things to expand the connector base and things like that so that you can integrate everything. Once you get there and you got a data platform that kind of doesn't have a wall anymore, things get kind of interesting. So we're really looking at then how do we leverage that in ways, and Robert did say this, I think, explicitly in the demo, that then it becomes, Studio itself becomes a repository that is perfectly well suited to sort of advanced visualization and visibility on all the data that you have across your apps, right? We know that FileMaker for decades has been like the most powerful rapid app development platform for building super powerful apps that run the operations of businesses, right? Major media companies, multi-billion-dollar Fortune 10 companies are running their entire special effects production on the FileMaker platform. It's crazy. Major retailers doing all their catalog production on the FileMaker platform. People solve big, hard problems with our platform that run the operations of significant businesses. And the same thing goes for small businesses, right? My old friends at Furnace Records, run their entire machine floor based on, FileMaker-based ERP system, essentially. So it runs operations with a lot of strength. And I don't know, but you guys can tell me if this is still true, but when I was a consultant in developing, always half of my work was then building the reports, right? Building the analytics to understand how those apps were performing or how the employees were performing or whatever that is. Well, if we have Studio now that can gobble up all this data in your on-prem, extended to cloud, all in Draco, all in Studio, but all kind of harmonized, and then it can start to affect visibility on that data and ways to report it. Robert was showing some cool graphing and dashboarding functionality. Then suddenly FileMaker becomes much more important to the CEO, right? CEO can be on the golf course, whip open their phone and see the dashboard on exactly what's happening in the business, at their fingertips from a browser. They don't need FileMaker Go or Claris Go, right? They don't need, to download bits to get access to that stuff, right? Those things are much more available. And by the way, pretty quick to build, right? So there's some interesting domains where we think historically we haven't been specific about what you can do with this platform. As developers, we know that we can tackle any problem. We never have to say no, right? Which is a strength. But when you're trying to steer a company to want to adopt it and do more with it, you need a little more clarity. And we think the notion of running your operations and providing visibility on the business is a pretty powerful combination, one that makes sense at the exec staff level, right? So if that's the case, then FileMaker developers should all get a pay raise. That's our hope, right? We want FileMaker developers, Claris developers to be, extremely important to the organization and do more. So anyway, sorry for the long riff on that, but I thought what Robert showed starts to prove a direction in the velocity with which we can build up the power of Studio and yet still keep it complementary to what we have grown to know and love and win with FileMaker, all in a kind of unified Claris platform. And I'm excited to see it come to fruition. Thank you, Bev, for finding the link.
Yeah, I have one question for the two of you, and I don't need an answer right now, but we're seeing a lot more questions about Studio on the community, and just wondered what was in place for people that are in it can answer those questions.
We should be all over that, and I appreciate the heads up. I will confess that a few people on the community team are on vacation this week, so if we're falling behind, that may be a human factor that we need to address. But are there specific questions you want to chat about, or is it more just we need to
just seeing a lot more? I mean, the trend is up really high, where you're getting questions specifically about how to do things in Claris Studio, and and if there's nobody there to answer it, then I think we lose that bite we got from somebody new.
That's a very good observation, and thank you for making it. Now we want to be more present, not less, in community and everywhere. So we'll look into it and see if we can get up there.
Thanks.
Yeah, Bev, thanks for that heads up for sure. I know, we've had some conversations internally just in the last few weeks about, being more proactively available for those who are using Studio in the problem solver circle. And we put some plans in place with team members focused on that, people that and trust, like Steve Romig and others. But also if there are other things coming up outside of those problem solver circle groups about Studio that we may be missing, just be sure to flag Rosemary, myself, or Steve, and we'll make sure that we don't.
Thanks.
That would be great.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think, Bev, over time, we will also be needing to empower, the voices that have steered the community and been there to answer the call when questions come up, like yourself and Mr. Blackwell, right, who have been tireless over the years. So we're going to do what we can to make sure that the platform champions know and understand what it is and what it's for and how we use it, and can help us, because we know we can't be everywhere at once.
I have a comment regarding, I'm probably the only person on this call who is not a developer. I am an in-house developer. I mean, and FileMaker is not my only job. I am a system admin. So we do use a FileMaker-based ERP. And I have to agree a lot of what you were saying, and that I'm excited for this, because then I can start sharing this. It's been hard to show, like I'm on the senior level, it's hard to show some of the junior ones. They're just not picking it up. So I'm excited that maybe the Studio they'll be able to pick up, because not only do we have our main ERP, but I have developed solutions for our company. And then something like this, then I would be able to pass off to some of our junior IT team. And we are now in 2 locations, and as Stephen, as Steve is, we're in Manassas, like you said, and besides Pittsburgh, and it's getting, I appreciate my job, but I need some help. I can't do it all by myself anymore. So I'm looking forward to that, and that would be great if the CEO, like you said, if he could just pull up a web browser, because I tried to give them FileMaker Go and things like that, and that's just a little too cumbersome.
Yeah, the reality is in the current age, downloading bits to your device, to have a runner like that is a lot to ask for just getting access to data or an app. So, having a sort of more performant web experience out there as an option for some of the expression of the systems we build is critical. It's table stakes. We have to do that, and we know we can do it really, really well. To your comment, I recall working with a durable medical equipment manufacturer back in the day when I was consulting up in Minnesota. And, the CEO of that company kept a master password to the database so that they could go in and riff reports and, do analytics on the data that we're working on until one day they went in and like destroyed half the data in the system or whatever. And we finally had the reason to kind of lock it down. But they needed a domain. That person needed a domain to get in and do the visualization they needed, do the reporting they needed to understand the business without calling on us for help. And something like Studio might have been just perfect for that job, right? So yeah, I think there's going to be ways for the professional developer who's building solving for the really hard problems to also distribute some of the responsibility to do the lighter weight things, right? And do the queries on the system or whatever it is. And the tool set is starting simple, right? We're not starting super complex. So hopefully it will be accessible to new folks that, might even find FileMaker too difficult.
Sounds good. Thanks.
We also, we acknowledge that a lot of the questions that have been coming up have started with skepticism, in part because we have released it at a very primitive stage, at a very early stage, right? But we've done that with intention. The developer preview is limited. The first version of it that went out with Problem Solver Circle is solely about one-way forms collection to get data that can feed into a Claris FileMaker-based system. And so a lot of people are looking at it saying, well, I see what I've got and it's not worth a whole lot. Like, why would I ever pay for that? But that's kind of missing the point. And I'm hoping that as we get to the 2-week release cadence and, that folks are seeing pretty significant leaps in value in fairly short amount of time, that the velocity itself will kind of prove that we can execute on the vision. Then the question is, do we have the right vision? And we'll try to be very clear on that, right? Our customer focus for Studio right now is you. It is nobody else. It's not, new, unsophisticated non-developers or something like that. It is about giving more better tools to the developers that we have in the community as a persona. Are there more of them outside our community? Yes. And we will attract them over time with the better tool set as well. We have lots of thoughts about that. And we believe in the power of FileMaker, right? And so having, this new modern tool in the mix is also going to be a way to potentially expose people at different levels to solve problems and then learn about FileMaker and how deep they can go with it as well. So, we're focused on this community right now. Eventually, as that feature set grows up and has some other standalone capabilities that might address new audiences, then we'll expand forward. But we're going to need to get it out there and get feedback and impressions from you all. So keep your eyes open and peeled, and we'll be listening. What am I missing, Todd?
Well, I have to ask my question because I think anytime I've had a chance to ask this question, I ask it so that it gets bumped up higher on the feature list because it's coming in from multiple sources, even though I'm the only one asking it maybe. But one of the use cases that I saw very first for, the 1.0 version, if you will, of Claris Studio is you're using, and actually we do it for FMburgh, is we've got a gravity form on our website that we use for our registration. And so to me, a natural use case was, well, if I want to get that data into FileMaker anyway, why am I not just using, Claris Studio for that? But I could see where there's a lot of customers that are saying, well, we've spent all of the, the advertising, AdWords and all of that stuff to get these people to our website. We don't want them to have to go over to this other website to fill out a form. We would like them to, stay on our site to fill out the form. And I know, at least at the last time I checked, that you could not open up an iframe on your WordPress website and insert a Claris Studio link to that. So I would just say that if you guys aren't thinking about it, please think about that in engineering and it would take to make that happen, because I could see that would be, I mean, not necessarily a deal breaker, but I think that creates a more seamless experience from the client's perspective of, okay, you're just staying on my website and you're filling out this form, but then my data is going directly into FileMaker without any other magic having to happen.
Yeah.
So,
No, I think we understand it. I don't want to represent for Robert and the team where we would prioritize it at this time, because there's so much to do. But a similar problem that we have in front of us that's going to take some time to suss out is we have a strong community of, built on Claris, what we call SBA, developers who build vertical market solutions on our platform. And so how do we take, a cloud-based property that we have in an instance somewhere and make it such that they could white label it or include it within the construct of the tools that they're building using our platform. And we don't have that solved yet, but it's definitely critical that we do solve it at some point. So I think these are similar things maybe, but that kind of feedback is super good, Todd. So keep putting on new disguises and asking for the feature, and we'll up the count of requests.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I think because I had visited the Claris booth and had a chance to ask the question. I don't know if it was when Clay or Rick was there, but I think they'd mentioned it might have been something, because there is a security piece that they have to kind of figure out how that would work. It's not just as easy as putting a link in an iframe and then having it work. So I mean, I know there's something more technical there than what I originally envisioned. So
Well, even iframes, a lot of them have shut down where you can't use them because you can't have that cross domain, cross server connection between, more than one. If it's not your domain, your servers, you just are shot out. So
okay.
So it's not just this, it's kind of the new security thing, because a lot of people would do that, and there were problems. So
there are a number of security issues with all of this. Not only that type, but the authentication process, the authorization process, and certain people may be discussing this with the company. So we'll see. The whole face of information security is in flux and is changing right now. And so just stay tuned, keep working on it.
Right on. We also have pretty aggressive vision for Connect, in that, Connect to date has been fashioned as a very separate tool set that can stand on its own and have utility in organizing workflows amongst different things. We've also been on a odyssey for the last year plus in building a variation of Connect specifically for the K-12 market in partnership with Apple, to help facilitate the provision of Apple devices into schools and make that much more simple in an environment, in a marketplace where there's many student information systems, and integrating their data into Apple's platform is a challenge. So it's had a very strategic impact on our business already, but relative to the Claris platform and invoking what I'm talking about, which is, no environment built on FileMaker, built on the Claris platform can exist in isolation anymore. And a lot of the data and the workflows that we deal with are dealing with external stakeholders and external systems, right? They're outside the walls. And I think Proofgeist did a pretty good job of enumerating the modern FileMaker revolution on their podcast a few months ago. But we need the ability to synthesize all of those things and bring them in, and then ultimately have the data either in Mongo or in Draco, right, within our platform in ways that will make the platform more powerful. And so Connect will itself evolve and have a really strong role to play as sort of almost a piece of the Studio Cloud Properties connection with what we know as FileMaker that will be branded as Claris. Is anybody totally whinging over the branding that we changed the platform name to just Claris? It's gonna feel weird, but I just want to address it if anybody's got really strong feelings about it.
I just feel bad for all the companies that need to remove FM from their name.
From their name. Yeah. I think FileMaker is part of us, right? And I don't know that it totally goes away. It's going to take me a long time till I can refer to the systems that we build with Claris Pro as not FileMaker databases or not FileMaker apps, right? I think Claris Pro it's a renaming. It's not a deprecation of FileMaker. FileMaker is going nowhere. Like the Claris platform is the future of FileMaker. It takes FileMaker, adds on a bunch of new things. It's conceivable that we could do it in such a way that we don't rebrand, but we kind of need to for various reasons. I mean, there's a lot of market information that we get from customers and partners about the FileMaker brand just not really being a supporting brand as we go out and we try and execute and build new apps and appeal to the CEO or the IT department about the use of the platform. At the same time, we also know that due to our technical journey, that there are things in Claris Pro, Claris Server, Claris Go, particularly around our identity management, that are going to make it impossible for many solutions that we have to just wholesale go, right? Some of the ways that we deploy, like at first iteration, supporting offline mode is not going to happen. We can't do that. And so there are solutions that won't work there right now. We will fix that over time. I think Robert mentioned in the at AutoEnter that right now we can't support Active Directory authentication to get into the system. You're going to have to build Claris ID into your system when you're using it, right? So there goes a huge swatch of our customers. We know it. Like, we're going to fix that. That will be fixed. That has to be. But because of that journey and some of those roadblocks for folks to want to adopt the new total Claris platform, FileMaker stays in market, right? And it will continue to progress with FileMaker rebranded as Claris Pro, right? Like the feature set will progress so that folks have that safety net, can be secure, knowing that I'm not losing anything. I can continue to build in this platform with confidence. I can play with Claris Pro and build new apps on it and use Studio and learn how it works and then figure out how best, I can use it now and then migrate to it when I want to. But we need to keep both things in. So I think at some level, as we get more comfortable with it, having FileMaker in market, having the Claris platform in market, we need some differentiation anyway. So hopefully it starts to become more comfortable. I'm the first to admit it's going to take me a while to not stumble over using FileMaker versus Claris Pro. So bear with us.
Especially for all of us in Western Pennsylvania, because we give directions by buildings that used to be there. So it just
Do that everywhere, Todd.
Everyone does.
Yeah.
Yeah, because the big thing close to where I live is there used to be a movie or a drive-in theater. And people, you drove this road and you turn where the Spotlight 88 used to be. Well, it was destroyed by a tornado that came through the area in 1986. But
right on.
But it's so it'll probably always be FileMaker, even if it's not. So
I think we have a big building in downtown Atlanta that everyone still calls the IBM Tower, and I don't think IBM's been in it for over a decade. So kind of happens.
Sears Tower in Chicago.
That's right, of course.
I've always wanted you to rename it Filmmaker because that's how I mistype it every time.
Yeah, we get that a lot. Another reason for Claris. And, I actually like the Claris brand. I think what we do is turn raw data into meaningful information, right? We bring clarity to business. And I think there is something to the Claris brand that any company would want. And so I do like it. Of course, I'm biased. I started with Claris 1.0 back in 1990. So I have a strong familiarity, if there's a word there, with Claris too. Todd, have I kept us late, or how are we doing on our schedule?
Usually between 8:15 and 8:30 is when we try to definitely end by 8:30. So, but if everybody's enjoying the conversation, we can keep it going for a little bit longer. If anybody has, I've got my traditional wrap up slides that we can get to at some point. But if somebody has anything,
I need to get dinner. All this talk of sandwiches is killing me.
But I guess that's the important. Gianine did not get to answer the question.
That's true.
I've been waiting here for you to ask me that question.
Okay, so what's your either favorite sandwich or sandwich shop?
My favorite sandwich of all time is the roast pork and provolone with broccoli rabe from Denix in Reading Terminal Market in Philadelphia.
Okay.
And my brother would probably be really disappointed because he's made the perfect Philadelphia cheesesteak in London over the last 5 years. So, but he would also in some cases maybe agree with me, because it is a sandwich of epic proportions. I highly recommend a trip if you haven't been to Reading Terminal Market for the Denix roast pork. It is amazing.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm gonna
Put that
tell
on the
him that
list.
you did not pick his restaurant.
Let me see. I'm gonna put the Denix info in the chat so y'all can find it. Tommy Denix roast pork. There it is, right there. So that's my sandwich.
Does anybody have either one more thing, whether it's related to AutoEnter Live or Claris Studio or any other FileMaker thing that has popped up that has you scratching your head?
Can you hear me? I switched my audio. You
Yes,
can
ma'am.
hear me? Okay, cool. Yeah, no, this was really helpful. And, Andy and Gianine, I love that you have been coming to meetings occasionally. That really, I think, helps us stay more engaged in the community. I know at least one other person on the call has been doing this for 32 years. And, we've made this our profession. And it's
Right.
a challenge to what do I want to say? To keep up. You're talking about how rapid the changes are now. And we've still got some clients on FileMaker 17, and I hate to admit it, a few even earlier than that, so it's this balance of all this cool stuff coming that we want to know about and we want to use and we want to take advantage of. But we also have, existing clients who we can't even move them fast enough to where we are today. So I love hearing what's happening, getting engaged, and I'm just hoping that we can find ways to bridge that gap between, our dinosaur projects and the future, because it is exciting.
Thank you. I agree. And I know we talk a lot about Studio because it's sort of the new and exciting thing. Like, we all want to know. It's curious about it, but that we've done a lot with FileMaker over the last couple of years as well. And just in terms of performance, stability, reliability, security, we've done a ton to it. So I think we're going to continue to provide value there that makes sense for us all. Peter presented a slide, I think last August, and we still believe it's true, that there are diminishing returns on the amount of value we can deliver in a time frame with the FileMaker platform, right? It's just a very robust platform, lots of code there. It's a Big Mac truck. It's hard to move, it's hard to be agile with that thing, right? And we do have this new domain that we can play with. And the more I see it coming alive, the more I'm getting the vision that Peter has for bringing a cloud scalable NoSQL data environment, even with a very straightforward and simple, no code-ish user experience, to the platform in a way that they harmonize, they work together. And I know we're going to screw up some things and it won't always be perfect, but the goal is there's really reality to it. And when I see what Robert's doing right now or demonstrating already, starting to come together, and it's making me excited to build stuff again. I've got my own personal backlog of things that I want to build. I just need to get Brad and the people off my back so I can get some free time to work.
We just all need more hours in the day.
That's exactly right. That's exactly right.
Yeah,
which as it happens to be one of the goals with the new platform as well. Robert did make the comment at AutoEnter that he went through an experiment rebuilding a tool that we already had. So he had a perfect spec and he built it in 45 minutes using FileMaker, and he built it in Studio and it took him 4 minutes and 7 seconds. And it was liberating to get back that time. And where it really came in, a lot of it came into the layout design and making little decisions about where the pixels should be. Whereas in Studio, that's just kind of a no-brainer. And things like sliding objects and stuff. Well, Studio is perfectly responsive. You don't have to worry about whether it's going to be on a phone or an iPad or a desktop. It just works. So there's a lot of decisions it makes on your behalf. And if you're comfortable with those decisions, then that's pretty liberating, right? We sometimes get bogged down by the responsibility of power that we have just in layout mode. It takes time to build things to design them really well. And with the new tool, you can thrive within constraints. So that idea, though, that notion that for Robert was an epiphany, if I can shave 40 minutes off this task, I am just giving time back to developers. If I give that time back to developers, what can they do with it? Probably a lot more, right? So yeah, philosophically, I love where Robert is leading us and where Pete's going.
Yeah, and I guess if I could just add one thing, because you mentioned there, Andy, about, Studio is full speed ahead, but you haven't forgotten about FileMaker and 19. We actually had a chance to upgrade one of our test servers to 19.5, and the feature of being able to summarize on server, was we're like, yes, because it's it's a report that my coworker, he runs on a regular basis, and it's usually, if he has to test it because it didn't generate the report overnight and get sent out, he has to click the button. He says, we'll go get a coffee or whatever. Well, he clicked the button and it was done in less than a minute.
Wow.
With generating that report. So thank you for not forgetting FileMaker.
I'm going to take all the credit for that one. No, I can't.
Todd, thank you for bringing that up, because I'm going to update our in-house server so I can do that. That takes forever, summaries. Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah. That's so we haven't updated our production server, but there was another one that we had set up primarily just for this sorting and generating this report, and decided, well, that would be a good test before we, just upgrade everything. And it went well enough that probably here within the next couple of weeks, we're going to get everything back up to 19.5 too. From what we've seen, everything is playing nice. So,
yep. I'm excited for when we get broader access to Studio, so that we can all start testing it as well and really pushing the boundaries with it a little bit. Because we do that, right? We every release of FileMaker I ever got as an SE, I'd go in there and I'd stuff it full of data and test everything I could. And I want to see who's the first person that puts in some ridiculous amount of data into Studio to see if that database can hold up, because I think it's gonna, right? Who's it? Tim Neudecker, I think, has a FileMaker database with how many records, Stephen? It's a lot. It's like hundreds of millions or something.
Yeah, he said something like hundreds of millions. I have a couple deployed at client sites that have over 1 million records in the table. Now, again, it's not just the number of the records, it's the structure of the data.
The shape of it, yeah, for sure.
But
somebody's going to put 1 billion records in the Studio. I know it's going to happen. I can't wait to see who it is. Who's going to be the first? Might be me. We'll see.
We were just joking about it too. We were not, I guess it's not really a joke, but wouldn't that be a fun challenge for the developer community? Who's the first one to get the most in there? So who knows? Maybe we'll do it.
Well, that do not call database a number of years ago had what, 100 million records in it? Is that the right number, or something in that order of magnitude?
Might be right.
I don't remember exactly who it was that did that, but had a lot of records in it.
Another interesting thing I think we're going to get to wrap our heads around, that I think Chris Moyer talked about pretty eloquently with Richard, if you watch that video, is that the Mongo as a NoSQL database is not predicated on a relationally modeled data set, right? The whole point is that the data that needs to be expressed in a view is what is in the table. So it's essentially, I think the word is polymorphic, right? You can have multiple data types in there, and you're essentially going to be flattened, maybe one way for us to think about it. But as a result, the engine never needs to do joins and things like that to present a view, right? That's part of the reason why it's super high speed. But it will lead to some interesting sort of learnings for us on then, okay, how do we take that data and then express it inside of FileMaker or in different FileMaker views? How does that work in the context of a relationally modeled data set that's driving our apps? It's important to have relational modeling still, right? It helps us turn data into information. But I think the combination of the two, I don't have my head wrapped around it yet. Like I got to figure out, what's going to be the best way to use, NoSQL for what it's good at, or Draco for what it's good at.
And I think the conversations I've had with Chris and Heidi and several other people is that we've got a different kind of database, but we're not all of a sudden telling FileMaker developers that if they use Studio, they also have to learn Mongo. We're not, it's like it's there, but it's hiding behind the curtain, and I don't think a lot of people realize that, and maybe that's where some of the fear factor came in. Is that, oh my God, I gotta learn all this stuff now.
I learn Mongo.
And you don't.
I know that. When Peter presented last August, I know I talked to a number of developers, like Michael Lane here in Atlanta.
Yeah.
I met up with him when we were up at Pause on Error in the mountains, and he's like, "Yeah, I've been going to town trying to learn Mongo, and it's really cool, but like you don't really have to." That the point.
No.
The point of announcing that wasn't to suggest that one would directly interact with Mongo. It was merely to say that it is the most popular document store format
Right.
NoSQL system on the planet by far. And there's reasons for that. It's highly performant. It's used by all the big dogs. And so that we chose it was more an expression of, we want the community to be confident in the capabilities and the power that it has, but also that we're not picking some fly-by-night, database engine that your IT department's going to be scratching your head about. They're going to hear Mongo. They're going to be like, okay, I get it. Like,
Yeah.
stuff.
And I think that's why several of us, actually, spun up some and did study on it and like that, so that we could answer that question. This is really powerful, but you don't have to learn it.
Yeah, and I thought Chris did a good job of articulating that with Richard, that it wasn't, he did a little advocacy that, FileMaker developers who are inclined can learn Mongo. It's not that big a deal, and it's pretty powerful. But the point was, why should we care, and what can we learn if we know that Mongo is behind Studio? And I thought he did a good job with that. So yeah, it makes sense. There was a meeting somewhere where Chris or a developer asked one of us about it, and we didn't respond well. I think we said, you shouldn't care about that. Like, you shouldn't care. But of course we all care. We're developers, right? We want to know how the thing works and what's under there and how it might impact our decisioning as we're building stuff. So Chris, for his part, did the research, and I loved it.
Okay.
I haven't had a chance to go to our engineering department to see if they agree with all of Chris's conclusions, but I think that he's probably generally right. So I believe him.
Okay. Yes, I know the link's there in the chat. But I will make sure that it goes out in the follow-up email for anybody that wants to check out the recording and stuff. So,
right on. I shouldn't be praising Chris so much in this recording. He's going to watch it, and I'm going to feel very embarrassed. Big thanks to him for his work.
All right. Anything else before I move on to our little wrap-up slides here?
For me, only thanks for having me again. It's great to see you all. It's great to be here.
You're welcome. Glad you could join us. I guess there is a chance for an in-person FileMaker conference, which is the Pause on Error, which is happening down in the hills of northern Georgia. They're at the last week of October. Cross is doing another one of our lunch and learns here on the 17th, if anybody's interested. And then there's LinkedIn and Slack if anybody's interested. Survey results. So we asked, when integrating the FileMaker with an API, your experience. Looks like the majority have at least, and this was a check all that apply. So the majority have fetched data from the external API and then created or updated FileMaker records. But then we've got a smattering of the other options as far as pushing data, using it as a source, or you haven't really done much with it at all. Second question we ask is, what was your preferred method for setting up and organizing and managing the FileMaker relationship graph? And this is not the ERD, this is the actual FileMaker relationship graph. So you were given 6 options, but in the immortal words of Sheldon Cooper, there is only one right answer. And most people got that one right, so it's anchor buoy all the way. But there was a few other choices selected in there. And then the last question, which got the largest scattering of responses, is which fictional pet would you most like to call your own? So there was a few in there, but Dino from the Flintstones and Gromit from Wallace and Gromit came in tied for first place. So important dates. Our next meeting will be September 7th. Again, pause on air in October. I apologize for my dogs because my wife just got home. And She-Hulk Attorney at Law drops on Disney Plus here on August 17th. And our next topic will be something, and we'll tell you in a couple of weeks when you're older. So that is all I have. Does anybody have anything? One more thing they did? Okay, well, I guess that's all we have tonight. And like I said, there'll be a follow-up email here probably in a couple days with some of the links and stuff from the chat and all of that. So thank you all for joining us. Until next time, have a great week and a great rest of the summer, I guess. So
Thanks.
Thanks, guys.
Hi, everybody. Good to be with you.
Thank
Take
you.
care.
Even take
Have a
care,
good
man.
night.
all right, take care. Have a good night.